speaker today is Gerry Murphy. The title of his talk is A Reflection on the Universal Wisdom of AA's 12-Step Program. Please help me welcome Gerry.
Cup of tea, very important to keep my voice hopefully clear. All right, so thanks, Mark. Yeah, every time Wava asks me to speak, I'm very honored. I'm also wondering what the heck I will talk about next time around that I haven't already spoken on. So the topic I chose today on 12-step spirituality, I chose it for two reasons. Number one, 22 years ago I was a student at a Catholic seminary in San Francisco, finishing up my training and studies to become an ordained Roman Catholic priest. And I took an elective in my final year titled 12-Step Spirituality. I was intrigued, and I thought, well, definitely there's spirituality underpinning this movement, and I wanted to explore that. So the class was a deep dive into 12-step spirituality. However, closer to home, I have a younger sister back in Northern Ireland who's struggling with alcoholism, probably for the best part of the last 3 years. So with her in mind and just being aware of her continuous struggles, she's been in a couple of detox programs. She attempted a 3 months rehab, like a residential rehab, but she bailed in the first week. That said, she at the moment, she's doing exceptionally well. She's going into her 5th month of sobriety. She's attending regular meetings, so she's in a good headspace. She's in a good place emotionally, morally, and spiritually. So she was my inspiration and the class that I took 22 years ago. Okay. So I thought I would just begin with a little overview of the history and the tenets of the AA movement for those of you who are not aware of them. So when did it begin? Alcoholics Anonymous was created in 1935 by recovering alcoholic Bill Wilson. Wilson had been failing at his Wall Street career because his drinking was so bad, so out of hand, he was admitted to hospital numerous times. Friends tried to help him, including his childhood drinking buddy, Evie Thatcher. Now, Evie had found sobriety through a Christian movement called the Oxford Group, and he firmly believed it changed his life. Now, AA is not a religious organization, but it asserts that there is a power greater than us as individuals. AA is a spirituality-based program. It works through a number of pathways. What they call the 4 absolutes of Alcoholics Anonymous were considered yardsticks in the earliest days of this recovery program. Standards for determining appropriate behavior as measured through God's eyes. The 4 absolutes: honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. AA claims that up to 75% of its members stay abstinent. However, from my research, many addiction specialists dispute this percentage and claim that it's much lower. The movement focuses on moral character, personal change, and accountability. Members support and sponsor each other as they go through the program. The 12-step format, taken from what's known as the Big Book, includes admitting powerlessness over drugs or alcohol, requesting help from a spiritual being, taking a personal inventory, making amends, having a spiritual awakening, and then sharing this information with others in recovery. probably know the 12-step program has been adapted for use with many other recovery programs. Narcotics Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, and so on. Okay, so that was just a little brief overview of its history and principal tenets. What I want to share with you now is the relationship between mental health and addiction and spirituality. According to Dr. Lisa Miller, professor in the clinical psychology program at Teachers College, Columbia University, having a spiritual life is good for your mental health. Now, Miller is a psychologist and has dedicated most of her career to the study of neuroscience and spirituality. Her newest book is called The Awakened Brain. And in it, she makes some pretty bold claims about how holding spiritual beliefs can decrease our rates of anxiety, depression, and generally make us most likely to live happier lives. Now, over the first 5 years of her research, Miller only asked one question. What's the impact of spirituality on the DSM diagnosis of addiction and depression? And her research was conducted in conjunction with Yale Medical School, and the results quite astounding. The protective benefit of personal spirituality, meaning someone who says their personal spirituality is very important, is 80% against addiction. In other words, they have 80% decreased relative risk for the DSM diagnosis of addiction to drugs or alcohol. In essence, what her findings conclude were: we are hardwired to seek out and experience the transcendent, whether we believe in a divine source of being or not. But for those who do believe in a higher power and draw from it in times of mental illness, depression, or addiction, they experience significant healing and improvement. Okay, I wanted to use that as kind of a foundation before going into a little reflection on a number of the 12 steps. I did prepare a commentary on all 12 steps. And then when I looked over what I come up with, I thought, well, if I do all 12, I'll be standing up here longer than you or I need me to be. So I'll do both of us a favor. I selected 6, the ones that spoke perhaps most deeply to me. How I'm going to do this, I'm going to quote a particular step for you, and then I'm going to suggest what I believe it does not mean, and then what I believe it does mean, and how that can apply universally as a spiritual and moral principle to anyone in or outside of AA. So I chose step 1, which from the big book reads, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. What does this not mean? It does not mean that those who are not overtly addicted to drugs or alcohol have it together and are spiritually powerful. We are all addicts. Substance addictions are merely the most visible forms of addiction. But we are all addicted to our own habitual ways of thinking and doing things, our defenses, and in some cases, our victimhood. What does step 1 truly mean? It means that those who admit they are powerless over a grievous addiction like alcohol or drugs have bottomed out and have accepted that only some form of alternative consciousness will liberate them. A new and more enlightened way of framing and overcoming their human weakness. Okay, step 2, chose step 2 as well, as it reads from the big book. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. What I believe this does not mean is that a supernatural power will descend upon us and instantaneously heal us of our affliction once we hand ourselves over to this higher power and believe. What it means is to finally surrender to healing, we must have 3 spaces opened within us, and all at the same time. Our opinionated mind, our closed down heart, and our defensive and defended body. To keep the mind space open, we need to practice some form of meditation or contemplative prayer. To keep the heart space open, we need to experience emotional healing, particularly the healing of our wounded inner child. And to keep the body space open, we need to experience healing touch and the peace that comes with feeling at home in our body. In a word, our sanity will be restored when we develop and experience an integrated spirituality of healing. Okay, now I'm going to jump to step 5. As it reads from the big book, admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. What does this not mean? It does not mean that once we fully own and take moral responsibility for our mistakes and behavior, all is well with the world. It's not. There is much work to do. What it means is that we can expect much turmoil and struggle before we fully get out of our own way and allow accountability and true conversion of heart to emerge. In essence, it's a dance, or an ebb and flow of resistance and acceptance. Resisting what's buried deep in our unconscious and accepting the light of truth. Step 5 is not about retributive justice, where the offender is shamed and punished. It's about restorative justice, whereby forgiveness of self, our past, and our failures is radical. Forgiveness is to let go of all hope of a different past. It is what it is. And such acceptance leads to true freedom, as long as there's also accountability and healing in the process. Okay, now I'm going to jump to step 8, which reads, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. What does this not mean? It does not mean dredging up a list of people who have hurt us in the past, so as to firstly justify in our minds why we have to hurt them. It is not about being defensive or resentful. What it means is to be willing to heal and reconcile past hurts we have intentionally or unintentionally inflicted on others, particularly as a result of our dysfunctional behavior. This is a process, and in some cases it can take years. It can only happen when there's been a transformation of consciousness, because, in the words attributed to Albert Einstein, no problem can be solved by the same consciousness that caused the problem in the first place. Step 9. Make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. What does this not mean? It does not mean going full disclosure with just anyone we've hurt by our alcoholism in the past. and it does not mean attempting to heal a deep hurt with a flimsy email or text message. What it means is taking time to discern, possibly through consulting with others, before we know the when, how, who, and where to apologize or make amends. The anonymous in Alcoholics Anonymous is there for a reason. Not everybody has a right to know everything. This is a moral principle that must be taken into consideration when making amends. Otherwise, we run the risk of further hurting or injuring the other party or anyone closely connected to them. Okay, and finally, step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. This does not mean that once a singular spiritual awakening has been experienced, it is ours to selfishly hold on to and keep, or that our healing is a one and done kind of healing. What it means is that we cannot fully understand any spiritual gift until we give it away. That we are held by some larger force that holds and loves us everlastingly. In the final analysis, addiction is a spiritual disease, a disease of the soul, an illness resulting from longing, frustrated desire, and deep dissatisfaction. The 12-step program teaches that addiction emerges out of a lack of inner experience of intimacy with oneself, with the divine, with life, and with the moment. In the words of Richard Rohr, a Franciscan spiritual teacher and best-selling author, it is only the harsh and dreadful commingling of both divine love and human tears which opens the deepest floodgates of both God and the soul. And I'm just going to conclude with the lyrics of a song that kind of jumped out at me one day by Neil Diamond, Captain of a Shipwreck. And when I was listening to that song, I thought, this song is summing up the very heart and ethos of the 12-step movement, which is about mutual acceptance, support, and understanding when you're in that deep, dark place. So, Captain of a Shipwreck. I was lost until you found me. You're the reason for my today. Was tempest tossed? Now I sleep soundly. Thanks to you, I gladly say. That if your gold mine comes up empty, I'll be there to work the claim. If you're a captain of a shipwreck, I'll be first mate to your shame. Trust in me to share your burden, stand by you where I belong. When life brings the day uncertain, I will soothe you with my song. If you're a captain of a shipwreck, you can find me up on the top deck. You'll be captain of a shipwreck, I'll be first mate to your shame. And thank you for your time and attention.